Welcome back to the Tracy Take. I'm Tyler here with my brother Ryan. Today we are breaking down the New York Jets 2024 offseason. We're going to go over all of the departures, acquisitions, and then also reviewing their draft picks. And then at the end of the video, we're going to wrap it up by reviewing their 2024 schedule and giving our record prediction for the Jets this year. So be sure to stay tuned in for the entire video to see how we think the Jets are going to do. But before we do that, if you haven't already, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell to get notified whenever we create new content. Ryan and I, we're in the middle of our NFL offseason recap series. So we have a video coming out every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. So if you want to see how the other AFC East teams did or just the rest of the league, be sure to ring that bell to get notified when new videos come out. So Ryan, let's pull up this slide here. And I think one of the things I could probably speak for all Jets fans. I think they're excited 2023 is over when it comes to football season. But everything that's happened from Rodgers' Achilles to then having to deal with Zach Wilson and just like hoping for him and just all essentially seeing the Jets. It seemed like they played every primetime game like early on in the season. And we'll get to that in a second as well with the 2024 season. But just looking at these numbers, I'm just absolutely just utterly abysmal. It's on the offensive side of the ball, and I feel bad really for the defensive side of the ball as well, just because they were really just given no shot. They were just given absolutely no shot because this is one of the best defenses in the league, but it was just kind of like, especially halfway through the season, like what's the point? So but abysmal in nearly every single offensive category as well. Defensively, I want to give them a lot of credit just because like rushing's 25th, but I don't really look too much into that number because they were behind the majority of the season. The teams were running all over them. What do you think kind of this Jets team kind of coming into this 2024 offseason?
So coming into the offseason, I felt like they were just a more extreme version of the Patriots, right? Even worse offense, a little bit better defense. And to me, these numbers just kind of support that. They had very little offensive production, passing, and even running, I felt like was okay. They would have explosive plays, but then that offensive line struggled to generate a consistent push. And then Brees Hall would bust one for like 30 or 40 yards. And that to me, I think was a lot of just their offensive production. Garrett Wilson, I think, had a good year again. He is a top flight receiver in this league, and so I'm very excited to see what he can do. But when it came to going into the 2024 offseason, obviously improving that offensive line was probably the number one priority. Adding a second offensive weapon opposite of Garrett Wilson, I think, was another priority. And then keeping this defense, I think, relatively intact. There were a few key free agents that were up, and I don't, not to skip to the departures already, but I don't necessarily think that they brought everybody back that they could have. And so that'll be interesting to kind of see like how this defense evolves, especially since this defense, one of the things that I do love about this defense is they kind of remind me a little bit of Seattle and like the Legion of Boom, where they don't really disguise a whole lot. They just kind of line up and say, "Hey, we're better than you at this," and try and beat us. And like they have the playmakers to do it. I mean, they were the third best defense in total yards allowed last year. So, and that was with the offense putting them in some horrible situations.
Yeah, and they would have been number one overall too if their offense was a little bit better and they didn't get behind so often because teams were just able to run and just kind of kill the clock, knowing that the defense or that the offense wouldn't really be able to do anything from Zach Wilson, Trevor Siemian to I mean, shoot, I'm blanking even now on some of the other guys. Mike White wasn't there; he was out of Miami, but still, it was just unfortunately just a horrible season with so much hype coming into it. But there's going to be a lot of hype as well going into this Jets team of the 2024 season. So let's kind of look at some of the players who left the organization. I think starting from here, Bryce Huff, Zach Wilson, John Franklin Myers, Jordan Whitehead. I'm going to say, well, like Zach Wilson, for example, I think is what I'll start off with now. I think that's probably the biggest have a nice day. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Type departure. I think probably any team. I think that we've reviewed so far, or probably will review. My kind of standouts that looking at this is there are some key defensive players that are gone off the team, such as Bryce Huff, Bryce Hall, Quentin Jefferson as well. And still just some big name guys that just kind of add to that depth. But they have also drafted over the past couple of years some good defensive guys as well. Which of these do you think here is the biggest name so far that is going to be missed the most?
So for me, it's going to be the top 3 defensive line players: Bryce Huff, John Franklin Myers, and Quentin Jefferson. Together, they had about, I think it was like 19 and a half sacks combined. Bryce Huff was their sack leader last year. So replacing 20 sacks basically is not an easy task to do. And I know you can kind of maybe take that Moneyball approach, but when we kind of get into some of their additions, all of these guys played 17 games last year. And I think that speaks to partly why they were able to get to almost 20 sacks is they were on the field. They had ample opportunity to like make those plays. Whereas some of the guys that they brought in struggled with injuries kind of throughout their career. And so while they might have been more highly touted prospects coming into the league, or maybe like they are a better athlete, they have struggled to stay on the field. And so that to me is, I think that they did lose a little bit of, I don't want to say their youth, because I think these are older players. Obviously, they're getting to their second contracts this season. But that to me, I think is what kind of sticks out here, because I think you look like after Quentin Jefferson, Mekhi Becton, Justin Hardy, CJ Uzoma, Laken Tomlinson, like Mekhi Becton had struggled with injuries. Justin Hardy was a rotational wide receiver. CJ Uzoma had struggled with injuries as well. Laken Tomlinson was a part of one of the worst offensive lines in the league last year. And then like Bryce Hall, Jordan Whitehead, I think that's a loss as well. But you still have Sauce Gardner at the top of that room. I think other pieces can kind of just be rotated in, because when you have that guy at the top of the room, everybody else just has to kind of fall in line and do their job when you have the guy that goes and plays at that level and makes big plays. So other than that, like that to me is the big one, is the front 4 players that they lost.
No, I think you make good points as well, and then kind of talking about with even their secondary, like you touched on even Jordan Whitehead. I mean, he did have the most picks for the team last year, so just kind of going back to like how you're going to replace that, and just hoping it's that next man up mentality. But I also think too, maybe we've seen this with some of the teams that we've reviewed so far, is that maybe their defenses were so good that they are sacrificing a little bit on the defensive side of the ball, because they do still have some star-studded players. So their defense regresses a little bit and put a lot of extra money on the offensive side of the ball, which I think would be a good time to go to our acquisitions now here. To just improve as much as you possibly can. Like just for getting Mike Williams, getting Tyron Smith, also getting Morgan Moses as well. Even honestly, too, even just getting Tyrod Taylor, much more serviceable backup in case something does happen to Aaron Rodgers, or if he's still not ready to go for some reason because of the Achilles injury. I think it's just a much more sure safety net, than having Zach. Definitely a much more sure safety net than having Zach Wilson back there. They did end up getting Hassan Reddick from trade with the Eagles as well, and so like I think replacing some of that. But I think the improvements that they made on the offensive side of the ball is going to help them out overall and take a lot less pressure off of the defense as well. Even if you look at the draft picks, getting Olu and then getting Malachi Corley as well with your first 2 picks, I think it's just that step in the right direction with that mindset of like, let's be 5% less good on defense to hopefully be like 25% better on offense. Because if they could just be average, I think statistically come the end of the 2024 season, I think this Jets team does have a good chance to make the playoffs just because of how good their defense is.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that to me, I think is like you try to balance it out. So if they're 5% worse on defense, like you said, they're still a top 10 defense. And so with that said, I don't love some of these free agent signings. Like Hassan Reddick is going to be 30 this year. I know he's been a sack leader like twice in the last 4 years, I believe. But
Mhm.
like then Mike Williams has been struggling with injuries the last 4 years or so in LA. Javon Kinlaw, the same thing in San Francisco. Tyron Smith is 34, 33 now. And he's been struggling with injuries the last few seasons. And so like I look at some of their top free agent signings, and a lot of these guys are getting up there in age, struggling with injuries. And I know like every season's different and you can't predict injuries. It's just you're buying in for like you're going all in for right now. And I think you can clearly see that with kind of a lot of their picks. And it just worries me like, okay, this team might be a Miami Dolphins team where it's like, okay, they are good for the first 7-8 weeks, but then they can't sustain that level of play throughout the entire year.
I disagree with that. I mean, so I think the Miami Dolphins situation is because of their specific style of play. I mean,
Yeah,
if they wear down, it might be because of age, but I
yeah,
also think too though the Jets are kind of in a unique spot because they know they have limited time with Aaron Rodgers just because he's probably going to
yeah.
retire at the end of all this,
No,
and so that then combined then. Uh, Though if they also still need to prepare for the future whenever that transition comes, I think then they still have gotten some good young talent like through their drafts over the past couple of years, both offensively and defensively. And then they have brought in good veteran experience. Now I can agree maybe they weren't the best free agent signings, but if that's your opinion, and so
yeah.
I think they did what they needed to do. I actually kind of like. I mean, they addressed the offensive line, especially the tackle position. As well, specifically. Then
I'm
also
not as
too,
critical of the Tyron Smith one because they did go and draft Olu. It's more like Hassan Reddick and Javon Kinlaw to go and replace 20 sacks. Like I think they can do it. I just get concerned like as the season goes on because I believe Hassan Reddick missed some games last year. Javon Kinlaw definitely missed games last year. Like that is where I start to get more concerned in terms of
yeah. Well, that kind of
longevity.
goes back. If they end up being the 10th best defense last year in like yards allowed or passing and rushing and whatnot, uh, but those offensive stats get to the numbers that we all thought that an Aaron Rodgers led offense could be, then I think that they would gladly make that change. And I think that's
Yeah.
kind of the point of what I was saying as well. It is that it is kind of like where do we want to be a little bit weaker? Like we're so good on the defensive
Yeah.
side of the ball. Let's put more money on the offensive side of the ball. Now, if it pans out or whatnot, then that's different. But I think the strategy, I kind of like the strategy that they're taking now. I think they're doing a good job of winning now while also then still prepping for post Aaron Rodgers. So that when a young rookie quarterback comes in, like there's
Yeah.
still a serviceable team in New York. And so, but I think that was kind of a good little transition though to the team that is on the field now, kind of going into training camp. So like looking at the offensive depth chart here, starting off, you got Mike Williams, Garrett Wilson, and then Xavier Gibson. I think the battle to me when it comes there in the training camp is who is going to be that slot receiver. I really think Malachi Corley can work
He
his
should
way
be.
in there. And so Alan Lazard is going to get some playing time just because with his relationship with Aaron Rodgers and just they just know each other, and so there's that comfortability there. So maybe he can work his way in. But either way, he's still a good rotational piece. But I think that's going to be very interesting back and forth between Malachi Corley and Xavier Gibson. And then other skill position players wise, Tyler Conklin as the starting tight end, the Brees Hall as well, running back, Aaron Rodgers starting quarterback. Nothing surprising there. And it's kind of, I think we've already touched on it. The main battle to me is going to be how this offensive line ships up. Outside of Joe Tippmann, and I would say Elijah Vera Tucker if he can stay healthy. But just where is everybody going to shape up? Where is everybody going
Yeah.
to fall in line? Where is Olu going to start? Is he going to start over Tyron Smith? Is he going to start off at right tackle? I think John Simpson probably is a good guy as well. Their other pickup at the left guard spot. So hopefully that interior line is significantly improved. So,
Mm-hmm.
but just figuring out if this is going to be the starting lineup, where's Olu going to fall in, where's Tyron Smith going to fall in as well, that's going to be the battle to me. I think throughout the offseason that Robert Saleh and the team are going to be talking about up until really week one.
Not only is I think that the biggest battle on this team, I think it's the most important because I think they need this offensive line play to be significantly better because they were, I mean, I forget, were they 23rd overall in sacks allowed or were they 30th?
28th, 64.
28th.
Yeah.
And like that is just not acceptable, especially when you have a 40-year-old quarterback behind that offensive line. They need that to be significantly better. And so I think you can see like they did go out and make significant moves and really try to address it this offseason.
I will say, to be fair to Aaron Rodgers, he was only one of those sacks.
Well, yeah. And I'll also Aaron. Yeah, I know. Aaron Rodgers will also do a better job of protecting himself than Zach Wilson and Trevor Siemian did. Like he's not going to take some of the stupid sacks, so that should help improve at least numbers wise.
Yeah.
And then another thing, I'm really excited to kind of see Braylon Allen in this offense because you have Breece Hall, who's going to be kind of your every down back, but Braylon Allen was a monster at Wisconsin, and I really think you get him in some short yardage situations. Maybe not as much between the 20s, but red zone, short yardage situations. I think he's going to be great for this offense because I think you look at this defense, and even with Aaron Rodgers, I think the Jets are going to be able to win games 20-17. And Braylon Allen, I think, is going to be essential in kind of keeping the chains moving, keeping that defense on the opposing defense on the field, wearing them out. And then I think that is like another way that this offense could have success is through Braylon Allen, through wearing teams down, because he is just a monster of a running back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be interesting how they kind of manage that running back tandem, because I still think Breece Hall's going to get a majority of the carries just with his dual threat capabilities. But he is going to be a good. It's funny. I would say change of pace back, but it's normally in the opposite sense.
Yeah.
Of what,
yeah.
Of what it's normally used for, because he's just going to be like, hey, we're going to give this bowling ball the ball, and he's just going to run right over you. And so,
yeah.
But I think that's going to be interesting. I think if we move on to the defense as well, not really too much. I think that is going to, I would say, be talked about, because I feel like this is going to be the starting lineup here. It's going to be interesting to see how the depth pieces play out, who gets cut or whatnot. But still, I like the defensive front here with Jermaine Johnson, Javon Kinlaw. Quinion Williams is the big name there, and then Hassan Reddick as well. And so even Quincy Williams, C.J. Mosley as well. I think those guys are solid. Secondary, top notch. I mean, they did lose Jordan Whitehead and Bryce Hall, yes, but still you got Sauce Gardner, you still got DJ Reed. I still think that they're going to be okay, the secondary. Is there anything that stands out to you about this defensive just kind of depth chart so far?
No, I mean, again, I think just kind of to touch on what I touched on the departures slide, I'm really curious just to see like where the sack production comes from. I think Jermaine Johnson will probably have an increased role. And then maybe Will McDonald gets a heavier rotation. He played in 15 games last year and had 3.5 sacks. So again, I think that'll be interesting just to kind of see if Solomon Thomas and Leaky Fotu was another offseason acquisition as well, that could be rotated in. I mean, other than that, I don't really see anything that will be too much in question here for this Jets defense. Robert Saleh is going to have this unit dialed in and ready to go for the season. So,
I think the defensive plan is just do what you did last year and just hope the offense is a lot better. Which, if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, it will definitely be better than whatever they had. So I think moving on now to like the 2024 schedule and kind of going into the record predictions. And so I'm fascinated. 7 primetime games in the first 11 weeks.
Yeah.
The NFL, I think I even saw an article but it was like NFL to the New York Jets, like, you owe us big time.
Yeah.
You owe us big time. So starting off on the road at San Francisco, on the road at Tennessee, then New England on a shortened weekend, and Thursday Night Football, Denver, Minnesota as UK, and then back to Buffalo hosting Monday Night Football as well. So a lot of travel during that time, and there are a lot of primetime games. I will say I kind of think that they're favorable matchups outside of week one, if I'm being completely honest. And so I think San Francisco is going to win that one. But every other one though, I think the
Yeah.
Jets have a good shot of being favored or like slight underdogs, like Buffalo, for example. Maybe they're slight underdogs depending on how they're doing. What do you think would be a good record for them during the stretch?
Yeah, 5-1. They should beat Tennessee. They should beat New England. They should beat Denver, Minnesota, and then 4-2, 5-1 is what they should come out. I think in this section of their schedule, because I think you look Tennessee, second year quarterback, first year head coach. New England, first rookie quarterback, first year head coach. Uh, Denver is a mess. Minnesota, while good, I think if this defense shows up, I mean, they'll have a rookie quarterback also.
Mm-hmm.
Most likely, unless Sam Darnold's playing, and if Sam Darnold's playing, then you should definitely win. Um, and then Buffalo, I mean, that's a division matchup. New York has had the Bills number though in the past few years, especially in New York. I think that's a huge advantage there for the Jets. So 4-2, 5-1, I think is what they should come out of this
Yeah,
section of their
yeah.
schedule as.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of thinking. I think to me, I'd just be curious, just kind of what happens. It's not really anything more with the Jets because there's still a lot of questions with the Jets. But I'm curious to see how some of the other teams end up doing. Like, how good is Tennessee? Like, have they developed? Did they take the right strides? Is Buffalo still going to be the team that we saw towards the end of last year, where they're very balanced and tough to beat both offensively and defensively. And so that's where I think there's going to be some question marks as well to go with both of those teams combined with the Jets. But in general, though, I think 5-1 is a possibility. I think it would probably maybe be 4-2, potentially 3-3. I think that's probably worst case. Well, worst case scenario is like 2-4. But I think probably 4-2 is going to be the closest. But then moving on then to the middle part of the season, where there's a good chunk of games here that I think could really go either way. But at Pittsburgh, at New England, Houston on another short week as well, at Arizona, Indianapolis Sunday Night Football. Going to have a bye in Week 12, which I always think is kind of a good Week 11. Week 12 is a good bye week. And then Seattle, then at Miami. Kind of once again, I think very similar as well. I mean, New England, I think should be favored. Sorry to say that to you, but then all the other ones, though, I think are.
Oh, they should be favored against New England. I thought you said New England should be favored against them.
Oh yeah, no. Sorry,
Okay.
the Jets are going to be favored in that game.
Yeah.
But all the other ones, though, maybe outside of Pittsburgh, but all the other ones, I think, are really kind of coin tosses or they're underdogs. Like Houston, I would think as of right now, probably going to be an underdog. Arizona's much improved. Going to be very curious to see how they end up doing. It's going to be fun watching Sauce Gardner and Marvin Harrison Jr. go off against one another. That's going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
Indianapolis, have to see how Anthony Richardson does and how that team's doing as a whole. Seattle and at Miami again. I think there's a lot of coin tosses there. I think this could be a stretch where they go 500, but this could also be a stretch where they go. How many games is that? Is that 7? I guess they're going 5-2.
So that's actually kind of more what I was leaning after breaking this down is I think they should win at Pittsburgh. They should win at New England. Houston, I agree. Houston might be the better team in that matchup. At Arizona is a tough matchup because Arizona plays hard, but I think on paper this team is still better. They should beat Indiana. They should beat Seattle and Minnesota and Miami. And so like I look at this. I think those are all really winnable games. Houston's tough, especially on a short week. That's a tough one. But really, they should be 5-2 again. My again biggest thing here. They have that Week 12 bye. These are all competitive teams, and so and I hate predicting this because I cannot see the future. But like if this team does start to fall off, or some of these older veterans do start to get injured, I think like we could see a dip in performance in this middle part of the season.
Yeah,
and so it'll just be interesting to kind of see what they're able to do. But yeah, I think 5-2, 4-3 is definitely not out of the realm of possibility. But then to wrap it up here with the final 4 games, so at Jacksonville, the Rams, at Buffalo, and Miami. I think 4 really competitive games. I think all
Yeah.
these teams are going to be competing for playoff spots. Buffalo and the Jets, this might be for the division here in Week 17. So Jacksonville competing for their division. I think the Rams are going to be competing for their division as well. The way this offense left off, I think this is going to be one of the best offenses in the league. You have Cooper Kupp, you have Puka Nacua. Both of those guys are fantastic. And so Matthew Stafford as well. Like Week 16, that's not going to be an easy out. They also, I think, were like 6-1 in their last 7 games last year, as like they had a rough start and then finished the season as a top wild card contender. So,
Yeah.
And then like Buffalo, always tough. Miami Week 18, I have mixed feelings about because Miami at the end of the year has always been questionable in the last, I think, 3 seasons. But it will be in Miami, which I think is a big bonus for them because we've seen like they're not a cold weather
No,
team.
it's in New York.
Or sorry, it's in New York. So that's actually a big bonus for New York.
Yeah, let me confirm that here. But yeah, so that is kind of my thought process on these final 4 games. Is especially any of those 4 games can go either way. If not, they might be the underdogs, because there's just still so much really not known yet on how is Aaron Rodgers going to bounce back. How is this offensive line going to develop? Did they move on from the right pieces defensively? And so obviously, yeah. So Week 18 is going to be at home in Miami. So that's where I agree with you, though. Like being up in New York in January is not going to favor the Dolphins in that style of play. And so I think that's what's going to be interesting to see how they're doing at the end of the year, how the Jets are doing at the end of the year. And to me, there's so many questions and unknowns, especially then too in this middle part of the season, and then even in those final 4 games. All 4 of those teams are expected to be at minimum pushing for the playoffs, if not already a playoff team. So that's why kind of when I go into my record prediction here, I have them at 9-8. I was really on the fence of if they go 11-6 or if they go 7-10, and so I kind of just like went in the middle and went 9-8 here, just because I think that they can absolutely push for a playoff spot. They honestly push for the division because I think the Dolphins are vulnerable. I think the Bills are definitely vulnerable just with the overall kind of organizational changes that are going on over there, or personnel changes, I should say, that are going on over there offensively. It's going to be a totally different type of Bills team.
Oh, okay.
There we go. So it's going to be a totally different type of Dolphins and Bills team. So I think there's a good chance. It's just can they go and win those games? There's going to be those close games because last year was just such a weird year for the Jets. And did they bring in the right pieces? How are all these new pieces going to mesh together? Because I can see them going 11-6, 12-5, especially just depending on how they end up doing in that middle stretch of the schedule that we talked about, then how they do in those final 4 games. But I kind of maybe went a little bit more of the pessimistic route that is probably going to be much more improved season. It's going to have to be more improved. It can't really get much worse. But still going to be, I would say, probably pushing for a 6 or 7 wild card spot, depending on how the records shape up.
Yeah, so for me, I went in that first section. I was like, I think they'll probably go 4-2. I think they'll probably go 4-3 in that middle section because one of the things is they have 2 division games in the beginning, 2 division games in the middle, and then 2 division games at the end. Sometimes you'll get surprised in those. So 4-2 in the beginning, 4-3 in the middle, and then 2-2 at the end, and like that got me to 10-7, I think, and that puts them surely in a wild card spot, maybe in the division, because I do think this division is going to be more competitive this year, because I think the Dolphins have been knocking on the door the last few seasons, but I think they've regressed a little bit. I think the Bills have regressed, and I think the Jets and the Patriots both improved. And so I'm very curious to kind of see what they throw together this this season, because on paper this team is really good. I have my concerns about the age of the team. I have some concerns about being able to replace that sack production, which was part of what was so great about this defense. And then they did lose Bryce Hall and Jordan Whitehead on the back end. And so I think Sauce Gardner being there will help them kind of replace some of that production because teams avoid him so much. So again, I really think that they have a good team. I think they have a Super Bowl potential team. But at the same time, I could definitely see this team going 9-8 or honestly even worse. So
Yeah. There's a lot of question marks. And I mean, all evolving around there. A lot of them starting with Aaron Rodgers. How's he going to bounce back from a devastating Achilles injury? This offensive line. Did they make the right moves? Is it improved overall? I think that one I'm more confident in. But and then it's going to be on the defense side of the ball. The people that they moved on from and people that they brought in, it can be as minimal of a difference as possible, so they can still maintain that top defensive production that they had last year. And so we'll have to wait and see. The Jets are going to be fascinating. We're going to be able to watch them a lot, especially in the first 11 games of the season with all the primetime games that they have. And so they're going to be fun to watch. It's going to be probably one of the teams to follow the most, just because there is that major potential with Rodgers and this team.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and wrap it up here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on what you thought of the New York Jets offseason. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you have done differently? And other than that, we will see you guys next time.